All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our October 20th regular meeting of Council. First order of business today is adoption of the minutes of the public hearing held October 6, 2014. Moved by Councillor Paul Davidson, seconded by Councillor Lefebvre. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? All right, seeing no hands, all in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Moving on now again, this time looking for a motion to adopt the minutes of the council meeting held October 6, 2014. Moved by Councillor Lefebvre, seconded by Councillor Paul Davidson. Again, any errors or omissions in those minutes? Seeing no hands, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Now moving to approval of the agenda. We do have one change in tonight's agenda. I'd like a motion that the item 5D, which is the notice of title for 429 Craig, be removed, as the owners have not yet received notification. So moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Paul Davidson. So with that change, are there any other changes for the agenda? Councillor Morrison.
Just a quick clarification. It's item 5D, but number 3 on item 5D, are all of them getting off? Oh, it is the entire piece. Sorry.
Okay. All right, very good. So any other changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended. Opposed, carried. Okay, we have one presentation this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and this is from Volleyball BC. It's a thank you for the 2014 Western Canadian Beach Volleyball National Championships. Hey, there he is, right at the front. Mr. Stephen Epp, and you're here to present, I believe, a plaque. Awesome. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, of course, Shane. Come on up. Maybe we'll stand right here and see if there's anybody over there that would like a picture. Do you want to do a presentation first before we do that? Why don't you have a seat and tell us a little bit about the background? We have some time tonight. That button.
All right, I didn't think I could make it, so Stephen Epp and Chris Densmore from Volleyball BC asked me to come. I'm the local representative here in Parksville. I'm Shane Hyde. I'm the owner-operator of Oceanside Outdoor Sport. So first off, I'd like to thank the council and the Honourable Mayor for supporting the Western Canadian National Championship. It was a huge success. Teams from Saskatchewan, all the way from Saskatchewan to British Columbia. I believe there was about 94 teams. So huge success, tons of spectators. And just a little bit of a follow-up on the whole 2014 season. We hosted the high school championships, which brought in the 137 teams, which is the largest one-day tournament in all of British Columbia ever for volleyball. So we're really pleased to have that from teams from all the way up the island, down and up the island. We also hosted Volley Bash 24, which is one of the largest one-day tournaments for adults. That was on Labor Day long weekend, and next year we're pretty pumped to have the 25th anniversary of this. And also in leagues every Tuesday and every Wednesday, we had the largest one-day league on Tuesdays for youth in all of British Columbia, and the largest league on Wednesdays, which attracted 110 teams every Wednesday, and that's the largest tournament. So for those of you that maybe don't understand what's going on those beach courts, there's a lot of activity going down there, and on behalf of myself with Oceanside Outdoor Sport and Stephen Epp and Chris Densmore from Volleyball Canada, we just appreciate the support that you guys give us, and definitely appreciate the support that the city gives us, the amount of work that they put in tilling the courts, and saying that we want to present you guys with this plaque, this picture frame that Chris Densmore put together, and hopefully you guys can put it somewhere in the City Hall. So thank you very much, you guys. If there's any questions you guys have with what goes on down there, we'd love to field those.
Any questions from council? All right, Councillor Greer.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I think it's a fantastic thing that you're doing here, and I think that's what's driving the economy. Our tournaments like yours, filling up the hotels and keeping all the young people busy. And I think we need more of that, and maybe someday we'll become known as the sports capital of British Columbia. but you guys are doing a fantastic job, and those are big numbers that you're bringing into the town. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And we'll go this way, then Councillor Lefebvre, and then Councillor Paul Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and congratulations on your very successful summer. Any possibility of doing something next year? I know you don't have the volleyball national championships every year, do you?
Yes, we do.
Oh,
Actually,
you do?
yeah, that's we signed the agreement to host for 2 years, so we will be hosting next year as well.
Back here?
Back here.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Shane, I'm just so darn proud of you. You've got to be one of the unsung heroes of Parksville. You've been diligently working on this league and putting Parksville on the map for so many years, and I'm really, really pleased that City of Parksville is able to help you out, or help the whole cause out in some small way. So thank you very, very much for continuing to believe in our beaches and for doing what you do. I want to ask you a question. Do we have any chance of ever attracting the Worlds?
For sure we do, yes. This is the small step. The small step last year was getting the provincials. With that came the opportunity to host the nationals, Western Nationals, and that is the topic for the next push, is to get the senior nationals is where we want first, and then maybe a stop with Worlds or something along those lines, yes. Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, I'm going to come up there in a second here and grab that plaque. I'm just going to take it home, actually. It's not even going to City Hall.
Sure.
I'm kidding. I'm sure they'll find a place for it here. I just wanted to say also congratulations. And, you know, it was interesting in your comments because, yes, Councillor Greer was absolutely correct. All the councillors are in terms of the impacts, certainly economic. But you talked about how well the leagues are doing, right? And even in this building, in our admin office, I hear the terms, oh, volleyball tonight, right, or this evening from some of our younger staff members. And yes, we very much have an older demographic here, but that doesn't mean we don't have a whole bunch of young people still. And they really seem to gravitate around it. And you know, fantastic for an activity just to retain and keep people here. And I also happen to notice in some of the promotional material for our city, I'm starting to see more and more volleyball nets, right? Like, it's starting to become a part of our fabric. So, and that's all to the efforts of yourselves and all of, especially you, Shane, and all of the times that you spent to really promote the sport here. So, you know, absolutely, Council is very grateful for your efforts. And I'll come receive my plaque now.
Thanks very much.
Always a great way to start a council meeting. Okay, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, we are now getting into delegations. We have 3 delegations this evening. The first of the 3 is from Cinnabar Holdings Limited. It's a presentation from Cecil Sharp, and he's president of Cinnabar Holdings Limited, and it's regarding the request by city staff to place a notice on title for the property located at 14-1051 Resort Drive. Where are you, sir? Very good. If you wouldn't mind having a seat right where you saw the other gentleman sit, and I see the red light is on your microphone, and I will hand the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening. My name is Cecil Sharp. My wife Lee Sharp and I are the owners of Unit 14 at 1051 Resort Drive. Thank you for allowing time to present our case regarding the submission before you. A renovation started on our property has been delayed. Our strata at an AGM approved what we have built, but due to a complaint from a neighbor, the Strata Council has not provided confirmation to the city that we do have strata approval. We need strata confirmation because we want to amend our building permit. We are working hard to resolve this with the strata and are confident that a resolution will be reached soon. 3 weeks ago, we received notice in the mail from the City of Parksville that our property was in contravention of city bylaws, and consequently, Section 57 of the Community Charter was being invoked to justify placing a notice on the title of our property. The violation referred to is Building Bylaw 7E3. Our building permit has expired because work has been discontinued for 6 months. On June 28th, we received notification that our building permit had expired because 6 months had already elapsed since January 21st. If you count the months from January 21st to June 28th, 6 months would not elapse until July 21st. When we received that notice, my wife Lee immediately replied asking for clarification if our building permit had really expired. She also asked what steps we would need to take to ensure that our building permit did not expire. We did not receive any reply until exactly 1 month later, on July 28th, when we were again told that since 6 months had elapsed, our building permit had expired. Up until now, we have never been told if our building permit actually was valid from June 28th to July 21st, or if there was anything we could have done to ensure that the building permit would not expire. When we inquired about this, Mr. Peters from the Planning Department made it very clear that our building permit had been cancelled. If that is the case, then it seems, strictly speaking, that our property is not in violation of Building Bylaw 7E3. It is not us who let the building permit expire. It is the city that revoked the building permit. The executive summary you have before you states explicitly that building life safety issues are one of the reasons for this Section 57 application. Mr. Peters has assured us that building life safety issues are not a reason for the Section 57 issue. Furthermore, within the past month, we have had a report prepared by a structural engineer confirming that there are no building life safety issues with this renovation. Given this, it is important to note that the executive summary before you is incorrect with regard to building life safety issues having anything to do with the application of Section 57 in our case. The second reason the executive summary gives for wanting to put a notice on the title of this property is that there are liability matters. My wife Lee asked Mr. Peters what these liability matters might be. The only explanation he gave was that it would prevent a future purchaser from buying the property without knowing that the building permit had been cancelled. According to the above explanation, we feel that Section 57 of the Community Charter does not apply to our case. Our cottage is clearly in the middle of a renovation. There is nothing hidden about this. It is obvious for anyone to see. How could anyone buy a building that has been under construction, but the construction is currently stalled, and then not inquire about the status of the building permit? We desperately want to resolve the dispute with Strata as soon as possible and complete this renovation. We feel the city treated us unfairly by taking away the building permit, which absolutely prevented us from finishing our renovation. We feel it is a questionable use of the city's money to pay to put a notice on the title of a building under construction just to notify a prospective purchaser that they would need a building permit to complete the construction. Surely the city could use the money for some other more pressing needs. I would now like to summarize the three main points I've tried to make clear. Firstly, the building permit did not expire in the typical sense of the word. Instead, it was revoked. If that is the case, then it is not really clear if the property is in violation of Building Bylaw 7E3. Secondly, the executive summary in the submission before you states that there are building life safety issues with our renovation. We have a structural engineer's report to prove that there is no life safety issue. Thirdly, we do not feel it is appropriate to invoke Section 57 of the Community Charter to place a notice on the title of our property because there are no hidden liability issues with our renovation. In conclusion, I would like to request that Council table the proposal before you for another 8 months in order to give us time to resolve the dispute with the strata, obtain a new building permit, and complete the renovation to the satisfaction of the City of Parksville. So that was all I had to say.
All right. I'm going to open it up to Council. If Council had any questions at all with respect to the matter. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering what the problem would be in tabling this motion for 8 months. Could we have a report from the city on that?
Well, I'll turn it over to staff if you give me a sense of what is the normal process here, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Neufeld.
Your Worship, there is no guarantee within that 8-month period that work would be undertaken or completed. At this point in time, the property is not in compliance. If they were to obtain their building permit tomorrow, if they could fulfill all the requirements to obtain a building permit, then the property would be in compliance. The notice, all the notice does is give notice to anyone who would have an interest in the property that there are issues around the building permit and the construction with the with that particular property. It's not a lien on the property. It's not. It's basically a notice, and the liability rests with the city, because once we know that there is an issue with a prospective property and someone goes to purchase that property, then and there's no notice on there, they don't know what the legal status is, and not everyone knows to contact the city to get that information. So at this point in time, it's a way to provide a safeguard to the public or to anyone who might have an interest in that property if they choose to sell it at any given time.
Just a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, and then I have to go to Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much. So if he was to gain a building permit tomorrow, then that would satisfy the city? So what would be your problem in getting the building permit tomorrow?
He needs to resolve it with the strata, I believe, is what Mr. Sharp indicated.
Well, no, that's not the case. If I had the building permit tomorrow, I would have more flexibility about what I want to do. I don't have a building permit, so there's nothing I can do at this point. If the city would give me a building permit, and I would be happy to have it. But as it stands, I can't do anything because I don't have a building permit.
But they tell you can pick up one tomorrow.
No, they don't. No.
He would need to meet all the conditions relevant to issuance of the building permit.
The reason I wouldn't get it is because the strata wouldn't give me approval.
As I indicated originally. Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Go ahead, Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Actually, the question was, you've just addressed it. Sir, can you not resolve the issues between yourself and the strata? I mean, that's what is holding this process up now, is it not? You've had at least 6 months, or longer than that, to do so. I'm not going to get involved with your strata, but I mean that's your concern. The liability, though, as suggested by Ms. Comas, is that if we don't put that process forward and tell any prospective purchaser, then we would be liable as a city for any negligence. So there's a liability issue, and that's what that liability would be. What I'm saying is get on with the resolution between yourselves and the strata, and then come to us for a building permit. I'm sorry. To me, it seems pretty straightforward. I don't know what the issues are between you and the strata, and I'm not about to become involved with it, but it's something that you're going to have to resolve rather than the city's going to have to resolve.
So, Mr. Sharp, you're clear, and I suspect you are, you're clear that this is, as Councillor Neufeld indicated, is strictly about limiting liability for our citizen taxpayers, right? Because once we become aware of a property that's not in a legal status, we have to act. Otherwise, we are potentially liable if something happens down the road. Now, is it your intention to sell your home within the next 8 months to a year? I presume not.
No, not at all.
So if a title were placed on, or a notice were placed on your title, it's really gives you ample time to secure the necessary permits, get the work done, and then ultimately have that title removed when your property's in a fully legal state. And if it's not your intent to sell it between now and then, it really isn't going to affect you a whole bunch, other than to ensure that if something were to change in that time frame, we're protected, i.e. our citizens are protected should anything occur.
In my experience with our dealing in this process so far, the responsibilities of the city and the strata have been mixed up a lot, and I can just see that the strata will be very happy to waive before the strata members a piece of paper saying that there's now a notice in our title that we've contravened city bylaws. They're going to be very, very happy about that, and they'll use it against us.
We can't really get involved in your internal dealings in terms of the strata, right? Our only concern, again, is to ensure that we're not being held liable should something happen or change in the status of your property. And when we say we're really talking about the residents. That's ultimately what we're doing here.
So the only thing that I can see is that Section 57, from my reading about it, is usually used for something like if somebody put in a suite and they didn't get approval for it, and a person buys the house and they have no idea that this suite never had a building permit or anything, like it's completely opaque. Nobody has any idea, and the city knows, and they couldn't get the homeowner, the original homeowner, to correct it. And so Section 57 would warn the new purchaser that that thing was there. But in our particular case, it's a building that's clearly under construction. A new person who, if I went and sold it tomorrow, how could anybody not know that they have to have a building permit to complete it? And they would have to have the building permit in their name. It wouldn't be in my name. And I don't have a contractor anymore, so they couldn't use my contractor's name. They would have to find out about that. And surely nobody would buy it. I just can't conceive of the possibility that someone would buy the place. It seems impossible. So I truly don't see what the liability issue is. I haven't had it explained to me to my satisfaction.
Okay, well, I think it's very difficult for us to explain any future potential issue that could arise from a property that is not in a legal state. And that's all a notice of title is. It's just ensuring that anybody looking at that ultimately understands that that is the current status. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for listening to me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to move to our second of our three delegations this evening, and this is a delegation from a Teresa Shore, and that is respective of a property at 260 Moss Avenue. Again, a notice on title. Ms. Shore, is that you? Please come forward. As you probably heard in my discussion with the previous gentleman, make sure the red light is on that microphone there, and I will pass the floor over to you. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Teresa Shore, the owner of the property at 260 Moss Avenue here in Parksville. With respect, Your Worship, I haven't really prepared anything. However, my situation is similar to Mr. Sharp's, but there's no strata involved. Last June, I took out a permit in order to get legal status for the one-bedroom, one-bathroom existing suite in my home at 260 Moss. However, shortly thereafter, I was informed by my property manager about a property that I have on the mainland, a three-bedroom townhouse, that there was extensive work that had to be done on that property due to a flooding that occurred from the washing machine. So I was unable to go ahead with what needed doing in the suite, which was very little actually, which I was thankful for, to get the legal designation. I informed the building department about this immediately via email and Mr. Stan Shope, and told him I would not be able to go ahead with the work in the existing suite due to this other problem that had come up, because I didn't have the money and I had to do the other repairs. Then, at the beginning of October, I received this letter saying that that the property was in contravention of the city bylaw, not city bylaw, the building bylaw and the community charter, and that the building permit had expired. So that's why I'm here, and to be perfectly honest with you, and this probably isn't the right thing to be saying, but I think I really don't understand the whole process because there was no building done. It was an existing suite, and there wasn't any structural work that was required. I was told what would need to be done to get it the legal status, and it didn't require any structural work or actual construction. It was very little that needed doing. However, I still wasn't able to do it. So I still don't understand why the building department wants to put a notice or lien against 260 Mox with respect to the suite.
So just to clarify again, there's no lien.
Okay, notice.
It is a notice on title. I think the key here, and it's similar to even the previous example, is that the city became aware. If the city becomes aware of a property that's in a non-conforming state, then suddenly we have now some liability as well, because we can't say, well, we weren't aware of what was occurring at 260 Moss Avenue any longer. And unfortunately, that places some liability upon us should anything ever occur down the road if the property is sold and what have you. So that is really ultimately what then triggers this kind of a process. So I know that you're doing the right thing by letting the city know that, yes, I have a suite that's been operating, or not even necessarily yourself, but in previous, exactly, I stand corrected. Yeah. But in previous times, according to the statement that you gave in your letter. So, I feel somewhat bad because I see you're trying to do the right thing and acknowledge that this is occurring. And I just want to, assure you that it's not the end of the world. You're not a terrible person or anything like that, that if a notice is placed on your title, as soon as you can bring that into a conforming state, that can be removed. And then you'll actually be in a very strong position because you will have a legal suite, and it would likely increase the value of your property, I would think. I'm not a realtor, but I would think that that's certainly a benefit when you can say it's legal and it protects anybody and everyone in future sense. So ultimately, that's the position you're in. Now, I noticed our staff did provide you an additional option, which would be returning it to, at least in a temporary fashion, if that's a lesser expensive option for you, returning it to a traditional single-family home. That may be something you may wish to pursue as well. And I'll just ask our staff, if that were to occur, that would also then reduce or remove or provide the grounds to remove any notice on title, correct? So that is still also an option for you.
Thank you, Your Worship. You've clarified things for me.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's the best I can do, but I will open the floor to members of the council if you have anything further to add. I don't believe so. Have you got anything further to add at this point?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Well, stick around. Obviously, we'll be dealing with these matters here very shortly.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to our third of our three delegations this evening, and this is from our Saviour Lutheran Church. It's regarding a rezoning application for 795 Island Highway West, and it's a presentation from Brian Hagedorn on behalf, and I see another familiar face there, and you're going to be both speaking on behalf of the church. So, Michelle, I leave the floor to you.
I'd like to thank Council for the opportunity to give you the first view of this proposal tonight. It's a rezoning application for the Our Saviour Lutheran Church property, which is at 795 Island Highway West. The existing property, as you can see from the zoning map, is split zone between the P2 zone and the RS1 zone, which is in the yellow. It's the back approximately 48 and a half meters that is RS1 zone. What the application pending is to change that portion that is RS1 zone to the P2 zone so that the church can expand the existing parking lot. So this is a plan of the proposed parking lot. It's not just an expansion. They're going to redo the whole parking lot. New curb, new sidewalk. There'll be a new drop-off and pickup area at the front door so that people can get in and out a little bit easier. The future plans are to add on to the church with a new church hall in the future when they have enough money to do that. So the parking has been developed to accommodate that expansion. So there's extra parking now that will facilitate that expansion in the future without having to amend the parking lot when that happens. It would be a total redo of the parking lot. The existing parking lot in this area here would be removed, and it would be grassed, which shows up on the landscape plan. So on the landscape plan, there's proposal to buffer along the western boundary, the northern boundary, and then along Doley Avenue in the back. And this would be a berm with some landscaping on it, and then a rain garden on the parking lot side of the berm. So the proposal is to handle the runoff from the parking lot, the increase in the runoff, through a rain garden with an under drain in it to not increase the runoff leaving the site. And if you may remember that previously the Lutheran Church had subdivided 3 lots off the far northern part of their property, and that's these 3 lots here. So when this property here was sold, they talked to the owners who bought it, and they told them what was happening with the parking lot, so that there wouldn't be any issues with a conflict there. And then the buffer on this side is twice the width of what's normally given. It's a 3-meter buffer and landscaped, and there's a solid cedar fence that's been built along this property line as well. And like I said, the purchasers of these lots knew what was happening, so there was no, hidden thing in there. I think this is basically what the site looks like at this point. Typically what happens on a Sunday morning or when they have a big event, people park in the grassed area. So there's an existing access that comes off here, and people park in there. And what they really want to do is formalize what's happening now and create a proper parking lot. So in order to facilitate that, we have to rezone the RS1 portion to the same zoning as the P2 portion. And I think that's the gist of it, and we're here to answer any questions if you have them.
All right, we will put that to council right now. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I live close to that property, and I know that people do park on the grass. I'm just curious, and this is a question for the CAO. The RS1 is taxable as RS1, so when it's extended to a parking lot, would it be permissive? Would it fall under the permissive tax exemptions?
If I may, Your Worship, the zoning doesn't make any difference as to whether it's permissive or otherwise. That's totally up to council, whether it be residential or the RS1 or the P2. It makes no difference. It's totally up to council's discretion.
Further questions from members of council? Okay. We don't seem to have a whole lot of questions, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, as you know. I will now basically say thank you, and don't go far, because as you know, we're going to be coming right back to this item very shortly here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our delegations. We're now moving on to reports, and we have the first, which is a report from Mr. Russell here. Can you give us the background with respect to the consideration of a zoning and development bylaw amendment to facilitate an extension of a church and parking area at 795 Island Highway West?
If I may, Your Worship, before council is consideration of a rezoning application to rezone the subject property that was just presented by the proponent from RS1 to P2, or private institutional 2, for the northern portion of the property, the 48.4 meters.
All right, very good. We do have a 5-part recommendation that can be moved all at once. I see Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Greer, and discussion on the now motion. All right, seeing none, all in favor, opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to Report 5B, and this is from you, Mrs. Comas. Can you give us the background with respect to the notice on title at 14-1051 Resort Drive?
Yes, Your Worship. A notice on title is a mechanism to ensure anyone interested in a property is aware the property is in contravention of city bylaws. In this particular case, the property is contravening Section 7E3 of the building bylaw because the permit for the property has expired and the work is unfinished. Once the owners obtain a new permit and complete the works, they may apply to have the notice removed. The recommendations are as per the council agenda.
All right, there is a recommendation there. All right, you wish to move the three parts? All right, very good. By Councillor Lefebvre, seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, and that's carried. All right, once again, Ms. Thomas, this is now Report 5C, and this is regarding the same notice on title at this time 260 Moss Avenue.
Yes, Your Worship, this report also refers to placing a notice on title for this property. In this case, the property is in contravention of Sections 5A and 7E3 of the building bylaw for an expired permit and for undertaking work without a permit. Once the owner obtains a new permit and completes the work, she may apply to have the notice removed. The recommendations are as per the council agenda.
Again, we have a recommendation. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Powell Davidson, seconded by Councillor Powell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. All right, the third item in this particular case has been removed. We're now moving on to Report 5E. Mr. Russell, back to you. Can you give us the background with respect to the consideration of comment on a liquor primary license application for the Fraternal Order of Eagles?
If I may, Your Worship, the city has received a referral from the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch regarding a primary club license application by the Fraternal Order of Eagles, Parksville. The application proposes a primary liquor club license with a permanent license occupancy of more than 400 persons, including patrons plus staff, and hours of operation from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 midnight on Saturday, and 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sunday. It appears in this case that the LCLB has undertaken a regulatory review of the existing establishment, has made a determination that there is what appears to be an historic misalignment between the activities at the premises and the specific class of license that is required. Further details are provided in the letter provided by the Fraternal Order of Eagles that was included in the application summary provided by the LCLB.
All right, and we have a recommendation moved by Councillor Neufeld, seconded by Councillor Powell Davidson, essentially not standing in the way. And do we have any discussion? Councillor Neufeld.
I would thank you, Your Worship. I want to make sure and clarify that, in fact, this is not a temporary change to the liquor license for the Parksville Curling Club, which is stated on pages 62 and 63 of the council report.
If I may, Your Worship, no, it is not. It looks like there was an error in the header of the impending document. My apologies.
All right, very good.
Just so long as we aware of that.
All right, anything else from members of council? Councillor Powell, and then Councillor Powell Davidson.
Thank you, Worship. Just so I'm clear, I'm not really familiar with the liquor licenses. It stays with the organization. The liquor license stays with the organization, not the building?
If I may, Your Worship, it's kind of a combination of both. It's to a licensee, to an individual group or organization. If they choose to change physical premises, though, they also must go through the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch and as well local government.
There are towers of these folks over in the big cities, so you got to keep them busy. All right, so anything else from Councillor Powell Davidson? Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I just want some clarification on the recommendation to have no comment at all. Am I correct in understanding that by council not commenting, we're essentially facilitating the process and not making it more complicated than it needs to be?
Mr. Russell, your take on that, sir?
In essence, yes. Ultimately, the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch is the deciding body in liquor license applications. If the city chooses to comment on the application, the city must undertake additional processes such as putting notice boards up, advertising, etc. If the city does not provide comment, then the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch will undertake that as part of their review process.
We're trying to make it a little bit easier because I suspect there isn't a person around this table that doesn't appreciate what this organization does, and certainly from the reports that I've seen, it seems like they're very responsible in how they deal that clarify? Very good. Any further comments from members of council? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. All right. I was wondering why you were here. Well, actually, I knew why. Oh, Mrs. Lovegrove, can you give us the background with respect to Report F, which is from yourself, our Manager of Finance, and it's regarding the revised 2014-2018 Final Financial Plan?
Thank you, Your Worship. Throughout the year, senior staff has come to council with changes.
You are far too soft-spoken.
Thank you,
Get
Your
angry
Worship.
with us.
Throughout the year, senior staff has brought issues to council for budget changes. Basically, the report is just outlining those budget changes that have already been approved by council and just informing council that we need a budget bylaw in order to comply with legislative requirements.
So essentially, all of these items have been previously debated by this very council, and this is really a housekeeping item to meet all the pertinent legislative requirements. Okay, is there any further questions from members of council? Well, yeah, you're right. Why don't we do that? Go ahead. Are you making a motion? All right, so you're moving the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Lefebvre. Very good. So now, are there any further questions from members of council? Councillor Lefebvre.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, Phil. On page 95, under General Revenue Fund, it's stated that the majority of changes are specific to 2014, but may also have an ongoing impact on future years of the plan. And yet, under at page 96, it says there's no financial impact to approving the revised financial plan. So what would be the ongoing impact of future years of the plan?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, please.
Councillor Lefebvre, the impact on the future years is the bringing forward of the funds from 2015 into 2014. So we're just moving funds forward, and in other cases we have moved funds forward and moved funds back to 2015. So the impact is just the amount of funds that are going to be utilized within the years.
Well, it's cost neutral.
It's cost neutral.
Very good words to use. Cost neutral. All right. Further questions from members of council? If not, I'm calling it. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving right along, ladies and gentlemen, we are now into bylaws. We have a bylaw for first reading tonight, and this would be Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2014, number 2009-8, to be read a first time. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Neufeld. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to bylaws for 3 readings. We have one bylaw for 3 readings tonight, the very amended financial plan we were just discussing. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Paul Davidson, seconded by Councillor Lefebvre. Any discussion? As for 3 readings, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Now moving into 3rd readings, and we have 3 bylaws for 3rd reading tonight and a recommendation that groups all 3 for 3rd reading. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Powell Davidson. Since there's a group of 3, there is anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition of any of those 3? All right, seeing none, is there anyone that wishes to speak to any of them in any respect? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Thank you. And moving into final adoption, we have one bylaw for final adoption tonight, and this is regarding our bylaw enforcement officer appointment bylaw. There is an associated recommendation which would do just that, and we have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Powell, seconded by Councillor Neufeld. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Okay, we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving into new business. Now, Council, do you notice how little space there is between new business and adjournment? Just saying. All right, before I hand it over to anyone who's interested in bringing some new business forward, I wanted to bring one item forward very quickly. As Council is certainly aware, because I've passed out the emails, both the City of Nanaimo is seeking a letter of support from us in their quest to get a foot passenger ferry service going. They're in some level of negotiations as a city. And also, at the same time, we're also getting a request from a group out of Cumberland in their quest to secure some funds for a new park in that area. And I'm wondering if someone on council would be willing to make a motion to send letters to both of those organizations as a good neighbor. Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Powell. Probably don't need any discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. I will get those letters out. And now I'll open up the floor to items of new business. Okay, Councillor Lefebvre, then Councillor Neufeld.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, I have three particular items under new business, but they all relate to the same topic. The first motion I'd like to make, and I'd like to make it a motion, not a notice of motion, given the recent, it's got to do with the agricultural clearing waste in Area G this past the long weekend, Thanksgiving Day weekend. So my first resolution would be that staff be directed to write to the appropriate provincial ministry or ministries to urge the consideration of a ban on large-scale land clearing, debris burning, and electoral areas on municipal boundaries, and that other more environmentally friendly methods be used to dispose of such debris. And I've got that in writing, so you don't have to take it down. That's the first one.
Okay, that is a motion. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Neufeld. So with that motion now on the floor, let's discuss. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Very good.
My second motion, Your Worship, again dealing with the issue of fire. We in Parksville made a change to our open burning bylaw with regards to agricultural clearing waste fire. So I'm going to make another motion that would be in regard to what we do in Parksville. So the motion would be that in light of the recent agricultural fire near the city, staff be directed to review the city's outdoor burning bylaw with respect to agricultural burning and provide options and a recommendation for council's consideration, because we can't very well ask the province to do in areas near our border, and we're not doing the same thing. So I'll make that motion.
So we have another motion on the floor. I'm going to go to Councillor Powell Davidson. The second discussion on that second motion, essentially asking staff to come back with some options. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you.
My last, I don't know if it's really a motion. I guess it is. I'll be going to the RDN board meeting on October the 28th. And at that meeting, I've had discussions with Chairman Stanhope, and I've written to some of the staff, and you all have a copy of what the CVRD are doing. And the CVRD have basically banned open fires or using the fires that were used for the fire that we had on Thanksgiving Day weekend, and instead they use only an air curtain or a trench burner. And I would like to propose from the City of Parksville that the RDN, and I've received significant phone calls and significant emails from good folk concerned about the quality of air which resulted from this fire and the problems that they had with their with breathing apparatus. So I would like to take this proposal to the RDN board on behalf of the City of Parksville on your behalf, and make a recommendation that staff look seriously into adopting the same fire ban that exists within the CVRD, which is the Comox Valley Regional District, by the way. So I would like council support in my proposing that motion to the RDN board.
Okay, so is there a member of council that wants to move that our representative go forth with such a endeavor? Councillor Neufeld, seconded by Councillor Powell Davidson. So with that, any discussion? And if not, then Director Lefebvre will be able to bring that forward.
That's it.
So no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. All right, thank you. Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thanks very much, Councillor Lefebvre, for starting the discussion off. The discussion that I have tonight will, in fact, deal with similar issues as far as burning is concerned, the nuisances, disturbances, and objectionable situations in which some of our residents find themselves with respect to burning, not only burning as far as the ALR lands, agricultural burning is concerned, but also looking at disturbances and nuisances coming from fireplaces inserts in fireplaces, home heating appliances, and things of that nature as far as the backyard barbecues and things that are objectionable. We have, as far as the City of Parksville is concerned, a bylaw number 1489 that it seems was never brought to third and fourth reading. This was date stamped February 4th, 2013, and in fact never did become reconsidered and finally adopted. I would propose that in fact, at least I would move that this bylaw be actually put forward for final reading and be adopted.
So you wish to bring this bylaw forward to the next agenda, which would be the November 2nd?
I would hope so. This is not something that is of, it's something that in fact should have been done, in my opinion, some time ago.
Okay, so that is your motion then. Do we have a seconder? Well, he's actually specifically asking that we bring a bylaw that obviously has no longer been on the agenda back onto the agenda, if I understand Councillor Neufeld correctly, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, ask a question, Councillor.
I don't recall that, and why wasn't it brought forward? Did we defeat it?
I have no idea. I would look at it, and it is listed actually on the in the Parksville agenda.
All right, I'll ask Mr. website. Russell. Mr. Russell, can you give us some, I don't recall that either, so go ahead, Mr. Russell.
If I may, Your Worship, I believe this was a nuisance, my recollection is that this was a nuisance control bylaw, and I believe at the time it was related to coffee roasting was the origin of it. And I believe it came before council and was, I believe, defeated at the time.
Yes, okay, I recall that. We had a coffee roaster at the time, and so there was a smell component to that. So that is what that relates to. But if I understand you correctly, Councillor Neufeld, you're looking for further provisions within our own jurisdiction to restrict burning activities,
That's
correct?
Right. I'm sorry, Your Worship.
I don't know if this bylaw is the correct mechanism to do that because it really pertains to a number of items. I'm wondering if the better approach would be simply to bring a motion forward asking staff to provide a report back on the specific options that are available to us, which would achieve the same goal.
And in fact, I have data here that I was going to do exactly that.
Okay.
I was going to ask for, provide for council's approval to go forward with a review of what will be an extensive review of our burning within the city.
Okay, I understand you. So since we didn't have a seconder on that first motion, this will be now your motion. Do we have a seconder on this motion? All right, seconded by Councillor Lefebvre. So with that, essentially now we have a motion on the floor that will be requesting some options to tighten up our own restrictions. Correct? Did you want to speak to it again as it's your motion, it's on the floor?
Well, okay, the motion on the floor I think is really of significance. It deals with what is occurring within the city, and it's causing a great deal of distress as far as people within the community is concerned, both the heating of homes with wood fires, the use of fireplaces just for ambience, the use of wood pellet stoves and this type of thing that cause a tremendous amount of pollution. And I have a set of documentation here that relates to air control, air monitoring. It's a part of particulate matter of 2.5, and a tremendous amount of I guess, impact with respect to health considerations. And I've actually been speaking with Val Wilson, who's in the media communications with VHA, and with Earl Plain with Environment BC, that there are a tremendous number of issues here. That's not only the cost of changing from wood burning to, say, some other consideration, but if we don't do that, there's going to be a tremendous impact with respect to health care and health costs and this type of thing. I have a set of documents here that relate to this type of thing that actually look at something that 30 or 40 years ago was something to rake leaves, and you could smell the pungent air around the neighborhood. And the comment that is coming back is that how can you get nostalgic about air pollution? Significant concerns. I also have a picture here that relates to what one of the couples that's presently in chambers has to deal with as far as her own air pollution concerns. I have a picture of that individual also, and she's allowed it to be distributed, and I will be distributing this to the council here with respect to the fact that she had to obtain oxygen at the Oceanside Health Center. All kinds of things with respect to this particular situation, and I have copies of all of this for council and for staff. It is something that is prevalent. The issue has become very, very focused as far as the ALR lands are concerned, but I think the staff is aware of the concern that I feel for these people, and I think that what we have to do is go forward with the review and the actual implementation of a ban. There's been a phase-out ban in Hamilton, in Montreal. There's been bans put in place as far as Prince George and Trail. I have a number of things here with respect to the use of language, and Trail suggests that Trail is, when they define air contaminant, means any substance that is emitted into the air that injures or is capable of injuring the health or safety of a person that causes is capable of causing material discomfort to a person. And the issue being that no person shall use or operate a domestic fireplace, stove, or solid burning fireplace appliance in such a manner as to create an air contaminant. And I think that we really have to be concerned about this situation. And what I will do is I'll hand this out to council and to the media.
All right, Councillor Neufeld, that's great. By all means, let's focus on the motion that we have right now, which is on the floor, which would be in effect to undertake that kind of a review, and certainly you can pass on your materials. I'll go to Councillor Lefebvre and then Councillor Powell-Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind Council that the RDN, the Regional District of Nanaimo, has a wood stove rebate program. In other words, the RDN supports wood stoves, good wood stoves that are efficient, and that rebate program is presently in effect and will probably be extended to municipalities. So we might have a dichotomy here of what's going on. I don't know how many people have wood stoves in Parksville. I would imagine we probably got a couple of hundred. And so anyway, it'll become an issue when staff do their report. It'll become an issue in terms of how do you monitor and how do you control and how do you use a wood stove or anything else properly. So I just want to point that out to everybody's attention, that the RDN's wood stove program is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere fast because of the cost of energy.
All right, Councillor Powell-Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before we do vote on this motion, I want to make real clear that this motion is not to put forward an outright ban of people using their fireplaces. We're looking here for a lot of public engagement on this discussion. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I think ultimately this will provide a report back to council with options, which may very well include everything up to and including a ban, but there will be a further debate. I suspect well, I know it won't be you and I in that debate, and among others here either, but there will be a debate, and this would be something to get that ball going, in effect. Okay. Do you really need a follow-up, Councillor Neufeld?
Just a comment, Your Worship, if you would, please. And taking Councillor Lefebvre, and I'm in agreement that in fact the CSA and the emission standards are really improving as far as the burning is concerned. Unfortunately, what we're also finding is that the pollution increases as well. It becomes extensive, and although the wood burning is more efficient, effluent being put out is just as great.
All right. Thank you for that. Councillor Greer, you had your hand up patiently.
No, I'm supportive of bringing back some kind of review on this, but I just wonder how people ever survived 60 years ago when everybody was burning wood. You know, it seems like we're having more and more restrictions on more and more things, and I don't disagree with you, but everybody seemed to survive years ago when everybody was burning wood. Thank you.
All right. I think let me tell a story here. I have to tell a quick story because it kind of follows up on Councillor Greer's perspective, because I kind of shared the same perspective for a long time, and living here in town, quite happily. And not that I had a wood stove, but I recognize the importance of being able to burn wood. It can be a very cheap alternative to many other forms of energy. And then one day I'm actually napping. I wake up, my house is full of smoke. So of course I go into instant panic mode, as you would expect, and can't find anything on fire in the home. So I run outside, yards really, really smoky. And it was a neighbor about 3-4 houses up, and it just so happened that the conditions that day, and I hadn't experienced that before, were such that everything coming out of his chimney was moving about 3-4 houses over and just descending right down in a pocket around my home. And it was just debilitating would be the word to use. It was pretty tremendous, and kind of changed my perspective a little bit. Still kind of feel the way you do, though, right? Because we've survived a long time. But, at the same time, we've got probably the oldest crowd here that we've ever had in this region. And it is, I think, very, very difficult for some people with any sort of extended period of time being subjected to that. Once I became mayor, I started to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially in my office. All right, very good. So we do have that motion on the floor. Let's call it. We are stretching beyond an hour here, and I thought we'd be very efficient. So all those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried unanimously. All right. Any other items, short items of new business this evening? Well, I'll see Councillor Paul Davidson. She's not running for office. It can't be that long. Go ahead, Councillor Paul Davidson.
I am going to be quick. I just want to talk about the three of us sleeping outside together the other night.
Councillor Powell, did you want to jump in on that? Because that is something that you essentially got us into, and why not give a little recap on what...
I slept by myself on the other side. I don't know what you two were up to.
So that was, of course, spending an evening outdoors in support of bringing awareness to homelessness.
Yes, and it was, what I'd like to say is that there were 9 people that showed up for Parksville and 15 that showed up in Qualicum. We had a very good turnout. I would really like to acknowledge Diana, who slept out. She was in fact homeless for 5 months in 2012, and she felt obligated because of all the help she received when she was homeless to come and support the cause, and I just really want to acknowledge her. I'm sorry I don't know her last name, but I'll sure get it. We had the most amazing night to sleep outside. There was no wind. It was warm till the clouds cleared, and then we saw the stars, and people were cold, but I brought my little dog who kept me quite warm. And it was amazing. It was the best night we could have slept out. And we never slept very much because, of course, you've always got one eye open. And as somebody that's homeless and working, I can't imagine how they get up the next day and work. We got to go home at the end of the day. So I think it was a pretty good success.
I'll add a little bit to that. I have to give credit. I was the only gentleman out of the entire group. It was all ladies that showed up as they said they would. And I actually stole a sleeping bag from my son, who I apparently don't love very much because did it ever suck. And I was cold all night. It was terrible. I got home the next day, and I felt miserable the whole next day. And of course, I had a nice warm bed to go to, unlike a homeless person would. And you know what? It sucked. There was nothing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Present company excluded. It was not fun. It really wasn't. It was crappy. And so, yeah, it is something we should always be concerned with and be very grateful we have a warm bed. It was rainy that night. It just wasn't blowing like it could have been. And it was colder that night than it was the last several. Councillor Neufeld.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I just want to make one comment about that homelessness evening. Unfortunately, I was not there. but I did attend the afternoon at Qualicum, and that was a phenomenal turnout. The people that showed up were the homeless, and they were extremely well treated. I mean, I saw one woman having her hair done, and she felt as though she was having just a wonderful time. Her hair was being cut, cleaned, and there were things that were going on, and they were so appreciative. I mean, there were men there that I mean, basically what we were doing, or what Sarah Poole and her group was doing, was showing compassion, and that was the key thing. I mean, it's just really, really significant, and just a comment that I would make.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Okay, so any other items of new business, or shall we move to a vote to adjourn? All right, very good. Do we have a motion? Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have yourselves a pleasant evening.